Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Mark Miller, and he is the president and CEO of Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors, and he's also the manager of the Hilton Family Office. Mark has spent more than 30 years in the tax and financial industry, guiding business owners, physicians, executives, and high net worth clients in protecting and growing their wealth. He specializes in strategies that cut taxes significantly, grow portfolios, and preserve long-term, lasting family legacies. Welcome, Mark.
Well, good to be here.
So, Mark, give us your background before you got with Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors. What did you do? Where'd you start out?
Well, I came out of college and I just was very fascinated. My father was in the banking world and had kind of started a financial planning firm that didn't go real great, but I got a little bit of a taste of it working with him, and I was just always fascinated. I started out on the brokerage end. I actually worked for IDS American Express to start off with, that small little American Express company. And kind of on the retail side of the business, and that's kind of what American Express does, what a lot of the brokerage firms I did, the Schwab's, Fidelity of the world do. And for a number of years, I was on that retail side and on the brokerage, insurance, all of that. And then I was fortunate enough to get some really wealthy clients that started to introduce me to people, and then got introduced to or invited to events where I started to learn the kind of the smart money side of the business, what we call the institutional side of the business, and work with some trust companies, Northern Trust, various other companies like that, and started to kind of just ratchet up in the industry. So in the 90s, I wrote some nationally published books on personal finance, and then started my own firms. I've always had 2 or 3 companies at any given time. Now I have 4 different companies that I'm operating or principals in. But I just got started to learn how the wealthiest of the wealthiest invest as opposed to how retail investors invest. And eventually met the Hilton family. They invited me to be the manager of the Hilton Family Office. And then today I hear I'm kind of talking about Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors. And that is a kind of a vision of Brad Hilton and I. Brad Hilton is the grandson of Conrad Hilton, to bring some of these high-level smart money strategies more down to Main Street, more to average investors.
Now, what do you see that that a lot of the business owners and what you're calling average investors, what are some of the mistakes that you're seeing that they make?
Well, it's not, you can make money on the retail side of the business, and don't get me wrong on that. Everybody can, if they have enough time and they can go to the Fidelities of the world and get mutual funds, if they have enough time and they dollar cost average in, you can make money over time. But a lot of people don't know that on the retail side, they're paying maximum fees. Mutual funds are a great example. You may see, hey, that mutual fund charges a 1% management fee, but you don't know, but internally they're also allowed to, by regulatory law, to actually charge more than that. And if you use your common sense, you'd think, how are the Fidelities, the Schwabs, the E-Trades of the world building these gigantic buildings on Wall Street and all that on 1% per year? They're not. They're making more than that. And ultimately, the investor is paying for that. So on the smart money sides, the smart money folks tend to pay a lot less in fees get lost a lot less volatility, more safety, and hence make better returns over time. So it's just there's just a kind of stark difference between the two sides of the business and the industry.
What are you guys doing at Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors to really help, these business owners be able to build more wealth? And because again, many times business owners are just in the daily grind.
Sure.
How do you guys help them?
Yeah, well, we're introducing them and giving them access to that smart money side and teaching them about those concepts of the smart money focuses more on safety and security. The returns are just going to be there
Mhm.
automatically, whereas the retail side is focused on, again, back to mutual funds, which most people have, what the 3, 5, 10 year performance is, and pick a fund related to that. Well, on the smart money side, the wealthiest of the wealthy Hiltons are going to look first and foremost at the safety and security, and then move to then what's our return potential.
Mhm.
So just teach them concepts that they're missing out on, as you know, because most business owners are still retail investors.
Right.
It depends on what level they're at, how big their company is, and what their net worth is. But most, and let's say if they have a net worth in 1, 3, 5 million range, they're still doing those retail things and leaving money on the table, so to speak. So that's what we do. We just educate them about in our opinion, better ways to invest, better ways to do their taxes, do tax planning, save money on their taxes, things of that nature.
So, you talk about, tax planning, and, we talked a little bit about this, and that, not all CPAs are created equal.
Mhm.
And you really have, those that are really good at the compliance work and doing the tax preparation. But then you have, the guys that you work with that are doing more of the planning and finding, you know, tax savings and structuring things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, let me first say, put this out there that I'm not a CPA, but we work with CPAs and we need to have CPAs.
Mhm.
I'm a business financial consultant, which in some ways is good to have because, again, I can look at things at a more 30,000, 35,000 foot level, whereas a lot of CPAs are focused just on the numbers. About 95% of CPAs out there are just doing compliance work, getting your taxes done, meeting deadlines, things of that nature, maybe doing audits for businesses. And only about 5%, I was just at an event where actually the speaker was talking about probably less than 5% of CPAs are actual kind of proactive tax planning CPAs, where they dive deep with you. Now, all of the folks that we work with, and we kind of have to outsource those folks. I mean, we're located in Atlanta, but the odds of finding that, 3%, 5% of those CPAs in the country are pretty low if we're just looking in the Atlanta area.
Right.
All of our folks we source from around the country that we think are the best in the country to work with our clients directly. Now, we know a lot of this stuff, and I'm kind of the quarterback that works with my clients, but we also want CPAs that small percentage that are really tuned into this and understand the power of tax planning and aren't sitting there going, well, I don't really know that much about that. So I would just say, just stay away from that because the IRS could come after you. Okay. Obviously, the Hiltons aren't doing anything and wouldn't do anything that would, quote, trigger audits or be, not legal and ethical and moral. But you've got to find these CPAs that really understand and maybe have access to these more advanced tax mitigation types of strategies.
Yeah. Um, it this is, looking at it, it's like, there again, there's the tax preparation, and your compliance, same thing. And then you have, this planning, you have this forward looking creative, and I don't mean creative as in cooking the books creative. I mean
Right, right.
creative as in willing to go look at the tax code, to read the private letter rulings, to do this stuff, to do the research, to make sure that these strategies are a right fit for that particular
Mhm.
client, because everybody's
Right.
situation is a little bit different.
Mhm.
Um, can you talk about how, again, that this is a different, I'm going to call it engagement. This is a different job that you're asking somebody to do than somebody who's just preparing your taxes year in and year out.
Right, right. Well, they in the industry generally, and this goes back to the 50s and the 60s. The CPA model was to, get two or three hundred tax preparation clients. In that, you're going to get a group of business owners to make some extra money that way. You're going to get your audits. You're going to get all of that. And that model is still in place, all these years later, even with all the technology changes and the information revolution and all that, most CPAs coming out, they want to go out on their own, or even if they build a little firm with a few CPAs, a partnership or whatever, that's the main model. But then the next step is to do what business owners, I think, really want and expect from their CPA. And I'll tell this story, and I mentioned this to you kind of in the pre-call, that how did I find out about all of this and how do I know about it even prior to meeting the Hiltons, who are probably some of the best tax mitigation specialists really in the entire country and the world for that fact. Well, in the early 2000s, I had a number of different companies and I was getting $1 million tax bills, doing very well. And I was introduced to the best CPA in all of Atlanta through a friend of mine that had been a little bit in that world. He was a mergers and acquisition attorney. And he said, "You got to meet this guy. He's great." He was very good friends with him, and he's the best CPA. Well, as the years went on, I just assumed that I'm hiring the CPA and I was paying him some pretty big fees, that he was going to be giving me strategies and ways that I could save, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in taxes. But yet he did some early entity planning with me, made sure we had a good entity structure, which he did a good job at. And then basically just had me max out my 401ks in a couple different companies, and then it was done. Okay. Now he called that tax planning.
Right.
Right. So finally, he just kept telling me, I kept saying, there's got to be something we can do. And he finally was an older gentleman. He's not in the business anymore, but and very smart guy. And he just said to me very bluntly, he just said, "I know you've asked me several times about other things. I'm telling you, we're doing everything we can." And he said these words to me. He said, "The bottom line is you are doing outstandingly well, especially for your age. You're one of my most successful clients. Bottom line is you just got to pay your fair share." And he said that to me. Okay. And that can go into a whole thing. What does that mean? And I
Right.
don't want to get all political here. What does your fair share mean? There's a lot of components that go into that. Okay. And we kind of had a little contentious conversation. And then I don't know if he was having a bad day or anything, he started cussing at me on the telephone.
Wow.
And I hung up on him. And the first thing I did was like, "Oh, I better call my buddy because they're good friends too." So I call my buddy up and he goes, "Well, what did you say to him? How did you make him mad?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm just trying to," and he says, "Well, give me a little bit of background." When I told him what I was paying in taxes, and then he said to me, my friend said to me, "Well, you didn't tell me you were making that much money. I had no clue. I would have sent you to one of the tax attorneys I know
Mm,
because they're the other ones that understand,
right.
this advanced tax planning and tax mitigation." Well, bottom line is, and won't go on too much further, but bottom line is I get with this tax attorney. By the way, he charged $2,250 an hour. Now, this was in the early 2000s. And I remember I just gulped when he told
Yeah.
me how much he charged an hour. But he said, but let me give you a little taste of what I can do before you pay me anything, before we engage you. I'll give you you're a good friend of my friend Bill. I'm going to give you a taste of it. Well, bottom line is he saved me first year alone $500,000 on my taxes. And so I stroked that check so fast. And I said, well, what else can we do? And within working with him, and then I had kind of a thirst to learn this and got into this tax planning world, going to conferences, getting with tax attorneys, meeting some CPAs that were in this tax planning arena. And within maybe 3 years, I got into the zero tax bracket, have been there ever since.
Yeah.
And so went from paying millions of dollars in taxes a year to the zero tax bracket.
So that was probably the happiest check you've ever written before.
Absolutely. I was more than happy. And I was like, what else can we do? How
Right.
can I pay you more of those hourly fees? Because it was such an exponential return on my money that it was like, a no-brainer,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, that's how I got introduced to it and then got further and further into it. And then in about 2012, I got introduced to the Hilton family, various members there of the family, and found out how big they were into this tax mitigation. Now we've got over 100 different strategies we use as part of the Hilton Financial Network, and that they've been doing for years. And just learning it, just inch by inch and bit by bit, and just understanding that this is how the wealthy really get wealthy, by, going from 30 or 40 for 50% of their money gone on an annual basis
Right.
to, using that money and leveraging it into building wealth faster.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I liked that you said there was he gave you a little taste to show you what else there was, because many times people think that, oh, there's one silver bullet that's going to take care of everything.
Right.
And it's not. You have to in somebody who's doing true tax planning, they're layering these different tax strategies on top of each other,
Yes.
and that's what makes it so powerful. When you're going to that CPA that's at the end of the year telling you, "Hey, go buy another SUV over 6,000 pounds," and it's like, well, I already got five sitting in the driveway, not using them. Why do I?
That's not a strategy, by the way.
Right, right,
That is simply because, and even a 401k, putting money in a 401k is not a well, we consider a tax mitigation strategy, because what are you doing? You're putting money out there and paying to get deductions,
right.
right? And or making there's an expense there. Okay.
Yeah,
So that's not necessarily a true tax mitigation strategy. And it's like, I think, and probably I skipped ahead here. I mean, I think the most important thing is to have a plan put together, a formalized tax plan, just like you would have a marketing plan or a business plan or an estate plan or whatever. You need to have a tax plan. And practically no business owner has a tax plan.
right.
Um, they're just kind of, winging it, and they're relying in defense of most business owners, they're relying on their CPA, and they're thinking, like I did, that this CPA that was the best in town was gonna save me, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year. And that just wasn't the case.
Yeah. And I mean, some of it with the picking the right entity structure and stuff like that does help, but
Yes, of
you
course.
can't stop there. You got to keep
Yes.
going. You
Yeah.
got to do that. Um, Now, how often are you now meeting with your tax strategists and stuff like that for your own stuff to continue to be able to grow and save?
Sure. Well, my tax strategist is one of our outsourced CPAs that works with a number of family offices, multi-billion dollar family offices. And we meet quarterly to talk about the plan. Now, this is our tax planning. See, we're going into this into the last quarter of the year is the real plan. I mean, we'll really get that because then we can get closer to what our estimates are
Yep.
and what we expect our AGI or our taxable income to be for 2025. But it's no different than our clients that we still need to meet quarterly and start laying the groundwork and talking about estimated payments and which is standard stuff, that's compliance stuff. But also other things come up all the time, and we might throw in, we might be talking about because we may be doing some things on the wealth planning side that specifically will affect our tax planning too.
Right.
So I've always been of the opinion that, and most people that are probably listening, is they maybe call their CPA a couple times a year, and maybe they'll answer some questions on things. But when things really happen is at the beginning of the year, make sure your books are all up to date. Give me your numbers, and I'm going to plug them all into to the software, and then do your compliance work.
Right.
That's when most of the communication is going on. Well, we've just learned over time it's got to be a continual conversation, and we have
Right.
formalized meetings every quarter. And I need to too with my CPA to just make sure that we're 100% on the right track and we were prepared for because when December 31st hits, that's an important thing that I talk about in my book, The Tax-Free Business Owner. You can't, once that hits, you then can't
Yeah.
go backwards and do tax planning. Okay. It's a forward-looking process. Doing your taxes preparation compliance is a historical process. This is more of a projecting forward process, and things have to be done before the end of the year and in place to get the tax benefits.
Right. It's funny. You use a lot of the same words I do. I always, a lot of times I say, CPAs are historians because they're taking all
Yeah.
the information and doing that. And it's kind of like, driving, you gotta look out the front,
Yes.
the front of the car, because if you're constantly looking out the back, then you're
Yeah. If you're looking in the rearview mirror, it's not going to help you. You're going to crash, right?
right, right,
Yeah.
right. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you're right. That's a good analogy. Very good analogy.
Um, So, we've talked a lot about, the tax mitigation and things like that. You guys have some other tax strategies that you guys use for wealth accumulation things. Can you touch on that a little bit and how it's not just the Rockefellers or the Hiltons that are able to take advantage of this? You guys have some programs
Sure.
where the mainstream common people can.
Right. Yeah. Well, absolutely. And that's been one of the kind of challenges for Brad Hilton and I. And that is how can we take some more of these advanced strategies and figure out a way to get them more down to average folks and average business owners, investors, things of that nature. So we have some proprietary investment strategies that we've taken from they might be originally they were a minimum of 1 million, and now we've taken those down to like maybe a minimum of 50,000 that we can utilize and put in, and that's more kind of in the what we call in the advanced tax mitigation area. So let me take you back a little bit because when we put the formal plans together, we'll generally do some bulwark strategies, some that maybe people don't know that much about, or maybe they do, like the Augusta rule and some fringe benefit strategies and some strategies around maybe current retirement plans that you have, things like that, those bulwark. And then we'll layer in some of these more advanced strategies that are the real tax savers, like, 4-to-1 strategies. So if you put, say, 100,000 into an investment, that you get huge tax benefits, plus you're in that investment for the returns down the road. And that can be a myriad of things. I don't want to go, in limited time, too
Yeah.
much in detail about those different ones because everybody's different and need different ones too. But it's generally part of the plan, and it needs to be part of the plan. Those different, and you mentioned the word layering. It's layering strategies, and maybe you can't qualify or you can't do one of those advanced strategies in the first year, but maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, then we can qualify and we can go into one of those strategies. But the goal is, and most of the folks, and you're probably familiar with this, Gary, that most of the folks, if they really do a deep dive, do a really good formalized plan, maybe we can save about 50% the first year on their taxes. And then we'll gradually layer in those other strategies and get to a zero tax bracket. I said it took about 3 years for me. Sometimes we can do it in the first year, depending on a person's situation. But that's a reasonable time frame. Within 2 to 3 years, get them to a zero tax bracket.
In these strategies that you're talking about, do the individuals need to be accredited investors to participate?
Some yes, some no. And
Okay,
again, that's a little bit of what we've been working with. And our model is very different than practically anyone else out there in the country. And we're doing some things, and Brad wanted to do some things different than other kind of financial consultants do things.
right,
And so what we're still working with, and we've done a great job in the first, 2 or 3 years, but we're still figuring out a way to structure those strategies so they can be accessible to our kind of magic number is maybe, if it's an investment related, maybe 50,000 minimum.
yeah,
That, whereas before, if we did that strategy in the Hilton Family Office, which you have to have a minimum $20 million net worth to even be
right,
invited to the office, it might have been 1 million. You see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
So, and really it's more of a doing things in more of a quantity where there's more people participating, and then we can put everybody into a group,
right,
and that way we can get the minimums down to lower amounts.
right, right. Um, Mark, I could talk about this with you all day because this gets me, jazzed when we're talking about, how we can save people money and how we can bring it to, I'm going to say the common people, if you want to call it. It's not the ultra rich that are able to take advantage of this, and I
Yeah.
love that. Um, what have I not asked you? You wish I had?
Um, Maybe just the difference in general of the the mindset that the wealthy of the world have as opposed to kind of the average investor.
Hmm.
Um, I did mention that they tend to focus on safety more, but I think the key is what makes generally, if I look at all my wealthiest of wealthy clients, is it's patience. They let retail investors tend to be very impatient, which part of it is I understand because they deal with so much volatility that it's that people can get antsy and maybe even lose sleep at night and make rash decisions and not have the patience to let investments play out or strategies play out. We're talking a lot about taxes. And so I think that the wealthy just have I mean, it's just very common that I see my wealthiest of clients that just really are just very patient about here's the plan with this particular investment or this strategy or this structure. We have these portfolios called the true wealth portfolios. They're kind of balanced portfolios, but let those play out and set the plan out and let it play out and do its thing over a 5 to 10 year period of time, not just be concerned about what happens in 1 year and make decisions based on what happened the previous year in your investments. So I would say that that's a big thing, that it really is about time and patience, and the wealthiest are really, really good at that.
Right, right. So, Mark, if people like what they hear, they want to learn more about, the Hilton Family Office and about Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors, how can they reach out to you guys? How can they get more information?
Real simple, can go to our website, which is hiltonwealth.com, hiltonwealth.com. And you can go to our resource area. I usually recommend that people just order one of our complimentary books. My newest book that I did in conjunction with Brad Hilton is called Hilton Wealth, How to Invest Like an American Dynasty. And then we also have the other book that you're welcome to order that too, and we'll send it to you complimentary, which is The Tax-Free Business Owner. And then you can learn more about us. You can learn more about us at our website. Happy to, if they want to talk with me personally, we can do a strategy session and see if we can help them at all.
Sounds great. Hey, I really appreciate your time today. Really enjoyed our talk.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Have a great day.
You too. So this week, my guest was Mark Miller, and he is the president and CEO of the Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors and the manager of the Hilton Family Office. I'll see you guys next week.